Some of the first stories I heard were in barns like this around McHenry County. My father was a dairy farmer and a horse trader, and he and his horse trading buddies would get together after the chores were done, and they'd stand around talking about trading a blind horse for a dry cow and who got the better of the deal. I was about 6 then. That was in the days before kindergarten. So I got to tag along with him on the farm. It was a great way to spend my 6th year. I used to like sitting there, though, with my dad in the shade, eating something wild that we had gotten off of a tree. And sometimes, times like that, he'd teach me things. Teach me to listen for the sound of the meadowlark, or maybe a Bob White whistling from the woods. There were times when it wasn't so much fun. Times when I had to stay back at the house alone, and I didn't like those times. It was about this time of the year, it was the spring. It was the time of the year that we plant corn here in McHenry County. The farmers say you plant your corn when the oak leaves are the size of a squirrel's ear. And it was that time of the year. He said, I'm going to plant corn tomorrow, but you've got to stay back at the house. I thought that a terrible injustice at the time, but I think with all the moving around on the machinery, maybe he was afraid I would get bumped and fall off the tractor. Farming is dangerous work. He said, I know you'll be alone, so if there's trouble, ring the bell. Now, we had an old rusty bell on top of the shanty that was attached to the house, old dinner bell. I had never heard it ring. Had an old greasy hemp rope hanging down, but that rope was tied off up on a beam. He climbed up there with a ladder and let that rope down. He said it wasn't for fun or for play, but if there was trouble, I should pull on the rope and ring the bell, and he would hear it out in the field on the tractor and come on in. Well, the next day, I was waiting for him to come in. Time was going real slowly, when you're 6 years old, and waiting for something to happen. You know how slow that can drag. So I thought I'd go look in that shanty. When my eyes adjusted to the darkness of that shanty, I saw our dog Bootsy laying in a dirt hole. Now, you always think of farm dogs, as being big, shaggy collies. Well, my dad loved to crossbreed these rat terriers with chihuahuas. And that was Bootsy, a little ornery, yappy dog. She'd get right behind the cows and bite him in the heels. And the cows would kick back and go right over the top of her. It worked out pretty well. Well, there she was, laying in that hole in the dirt in that shanty, and about a yard from her was a snake. And I thought to myself, this could be trouble. I looked up at that rusty bell. I liked the idea of ringing that. I looked back, and that snake seemed to be getting longer with a more serious expression on its face. So I finally convinced myself that was trouble, and I went and grabbed onto the hemp rope, that greasy old rope, and gave it a pull. When the rusty side of that bell hit the clapper, it just sent a low toll out over the fields. The pigeons got up off the barn, and the heifers jumped around in the pasture with their tails straight in the air. I don't think they'd ever heard that sound either. I liked it so much I rang it again. And when that toll had drifted away, I heard another sound. It was the sound of a tractor. Now, every tractor sounds different, and this was my dad's tractor. I could tell, and I could hear it coming closer. It wasn't long before I saw the smoke from the stack over the corn crib, and then him coming around the corner of the tool shed, really moving. He had the old International H tractor in road gear. So I knew right then that he was worried. He stopped the tractor where I was standing and turned the ignition key off. You know how quiet it gets when a big engine like that shuts down. I thought maybe I was in trouble. He said, "What's the trouble?" he said. I said, "There's a snake over there by Bootsy." Well, it was a garter snake. It was about 9 inches long, disappointingly non-poisonous. He shook his head. He said I was bugs. But he let go with a little bit of a sigh, kind of a breath. I think he was relieved that I was all right. We went into the house. We had an early lunch, listened to the farm report. But when the music came on, the old WLS barn dance station after the news, he didn't do a little two-step foxtrot across the linoleum floor like he usually did. So maybe he was more angry with me than he let on. I never did ring the bell again. We moved into town, into Spring Grove, and he got a job working in a factory for a couple of years, which must have been hard on him, being inside. but he never said too much about it. The following spring, he got a job working for a Lipizzan horse farm near here, and that was a gift because he was put in charge of the brood mares. And I got to go with him in the wintertime when the mares would foal. We'd sit up all night watching those foals. There wasn't much to do but watch in amazement, and we welcomed a lot of Lipizzan foals into the world that winter. But one day he was moving one of the big stallions from one box stall to another, and the horse got away from him. There was a lot of stress and pull on the lead, and my father had a heart attack, and he died about the time that I entered high school. And there were times, I think it's true with all of us, when there was trouble, and I ached to pull on the rope, but I didn't have a bell to ring, and he didn't have a tractor to come on in from the field. And this story has sat idle for a lot of years, just like the old rusty bell. But these days, when I tell it as a story, it's like pulling on the rope. When I look out there and see in the eyes of the listeners that they hear that bell, or maybe a bell of their own, then I know I've rung it. Then I can hear the tractor coming too.